Okay, so welcome to this talk about bioresonance. I'm going to talk a little bit about bioresonance, about what it is, and show you some brilliant little treatment devices for working with bioresonance at home on your own. And I'm also going to talk briefly about bioresonance scans, because there's the possibility of having a medically diagnostic bioresonance scan, but not everyone knows what that entails or what it might show up. So that's my aim for today as this little introductory talk. So thank you for coming along, and let's start. Okay, so I always like to start with this quote from Nikola Tesla. It's a brilliant little quote. He says simply, if you want to discover the secrets of the universe, then think in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. But we could also change that sentence slightly and say, if you want to discover the secrets of good health or long-lasting health, then think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So this is what we'll be looking at as we go through this presentation. Everything is made of energy. Even things that you think are solid, they're still made of energy. And that means that everything has its own resonant frequency, or you could call it a vibration. Now, bioresonance makes use of this. It works through a principle of matching vibrations. So my body has a frequency, it has a vibration. And if another vibration or frequency that matches that, which I'm giving off, comes along, there will be an interaction. And with this, if you like, universal law, we can create changes to our health. Now, the word resonance, bioresonance, resonance means the matching of frequencies. And when we add bio in front of it, it really means the kind of the matching of frequencies within ourself, or our own matching of frequencies. So what do I mean? What am I talking about here? A good way of explaining this is to think about an experiment you might have seen in a physics lesson at school with two tuning forks. If I have two tuning forks and they're identical, let's say they both are tuning forks for the note A, if I hold them both and I knock one of them against a hard surface, it will sound, it will go ding, and the frequency of that sound will move out. It will expand like the ripples on a pond when you throw a stone into the pond and you get those ripples expanding out. So the sound, the vibration of the tuning fork will expand and move over until it begins to meet and affect the tuning fork that hasn't been tinged, as it were. And what you'll find is that both tuning forks will begin to sound. So we've only caused one of them to sound, but the vibrations or the frequencies of that have caused the other one to sound as well. And that's because the one that was not tinged on the table has matched the frequency that expanded into it. It's matched it and it's begun to sound as well. So this is a really simple principle, the matching of frequencies. There's many, many times in our lives where we experience this. A completely different example, but one that you've probably experienced many times in your life, is if you think about somebody who's in a really, really bad mood or really sad mood, or the opposite, someone who's ecstatically happy. If you go into a room with someone who's in a very extreme mood, even before you've said anything to them, you might begin to feel a little something's up with that person. And if you sit with them and you start talking, you will begin to be affected by their ecstatically happy mood because they've just won the lottery, or their deeply sad, depressed or upset mood. And you'll begin to take that on and you'll begin to feel a bit ugh or a bit wow, depending on what that person's experiencing. So that's a silly other example, but it shows this kind of universal law that when we have two different frequencies together, two people with different frequencies, the stronger frequency will always influence the weaker frequency, and the weaker one will match the stronger one. So we've seen that with the tuning fork illustration here, but we can take that and develop it in terms of bioresonance, and we can say, okay, so if I have an organ that has its own frequency, of course, but that organ is a little bit weak or depleted, and I manufacture via an external device, here's a picture of one, a bioresonance device, I create the healthy frequency of that depleted organ, and I start playing that healthy frequency, it's going to start affecting the depleted organ. And just like the tuning fork, the depleted organ is going to say, oh, oh, yes, I recognize that frequency. Oh, I can join in with that. Oh, yes, I remember how that works. And we'll get a change of health. So that's what we see here. This is how, in a very, very basic way, bioresonance works. Each of our organs, of course, in fact, every part of our body has its own resonant frequency. And when we're fit and healthy, those resonant frequencies are nice and strong. An electromagnetic field is created that's vibrant. But if we're tired, if we're sick, if we're stressed, if we're taking on lots of toxins, our organs, as we see here, begin to weaken, and the frequency of the electromagnetic oscillations begins to weaken. And then we begin to show signs of ill health or dis-ease. Might be a rash, might be a headache, might be lack of energy, or one of a million different symptoms. So again, we can use an external device like the one shown here, and I'll talk more about this in a minute, to play the frequencies of those depleted organs into a person's body until they become strong again. And the great thing about that is there's no side effects. It's easy to do. It's completely harmless. There's no toxic residues. It's just very easy. So why does this happen? Well, research shows that a low pulsating electromagnetic field produces the effect of stimulating our cells. And when we stimulate our cells, a chain of processes is set into motion that improves our health, as I said, without side effects. Now, the great thing about bioresonance is rather than just treating symptoms at the surface level, we can actually dive in deeply. And this is what having a bioresonance scan helps with, because we can get to the root cause of a problem. So some people know what the root cause is, and we can treat that with bioresonance. But some people don't know. And so if they have a scan, and I'll talk more about this later, the scan will reveal what the root cause is, and then we can play the frequencies we need to address that root cause. It might be a parasite, it might be a virus wreaking havoc in the body, or some toxin, and we can then eliminate that with bioresonance without adversely affecting the healthy functioning of our organs. So it's an absolutely brilliant tool to have. Now, most people, when they, well, maybe not fair to say most people, generally, people, when they start feeling below par, they start experiencing symptoms, they might go off to the doctor. And generally, doctors will prescribe drugs to supposedly improve their health. And of course, there's a time and a place for drugs, and it's great that we have drugs available to us. But for many people, if they take drugs, there'll be a side effect. And then they'll need drugs to treat the side effect, and that will have another side effect. And by the time someone becomes quite elderly, there's the potential that they're taking many, many drugs and still not completely getting to the root cause of their ailments. And a part of this is because conventional drugs create a residue. They leave toxins in the liver and in different parts of the body, and those, of course, create other side effects. So wouldn't it be great if there was another way, another option? Of course, there's many options for improving health, but one of them is bioresonance. And if we could treat our health with a little device like this, and that was harmless and yet effective, if it didn't leave toxic residues, if it didn't have side effects, wouldn't that be brilliant? And wouldn't it be even more brilliant if you could self-treat? So if you woke up with a headache or migraine or tummy ache, or you broke a bone, or you picked up a bug or the flu or something, you could just whip out your bioresonance device and put on the relevant programs to treat yourself. And this is exactly what's on offer with these little mini devices that I'm going to talk more about. So there are many bioresonance companies around the globe, and I work with a company called Deta Elis Holding, who have been running for over 30 years now globally. And they have this one really wonderful mission, which is to help people get to the root cause of their health and to improve their health holistically without any side effects. And to help people globally do that, they've created 3 little mini pocket-sized devices. So if I put one against my hand, you can see they're quite small. They easily fit in a pocket. And they created 3 devices because they understood that if we really want to change our health, it's not just a matter of getting stronger, of building up our health. Equally, it's not just a matter of detoxing and getting rid of the toxins or whatever is affecting our health adversely. And neither is it just a matter of balancing our emotions and energizing our body and eliminating the effects of stress and radiation and things like this. They noticed and realized that actually we need all 3 approaches in order to improve our health. Yes, we need to spring clean. We need to get rid of all the toxins, all of the microorganisms, all of the nasty things that don't belong in our body. We need to restore, to recalibrate, to build up and strengthen our health. And to do that, we also need to ensure that our cells have the correct energy level within them. We need to have our emotional state balanced. We need to de-stress the body, and we need to protect ourselves from the effects of radiation and 5G and that sort of thing. So if we can combine all 3 approaches to health, then we can create a real change in our health, in our life experience. And so Deta Elis have created 3 different devices that each address one of these areas of health improvement. And they're all, as I say, small devices that can easily fit in your pocket. So you can be treating yourself whilst also getting on with your daily life. Now, some people say, well, why do we need 3? Obviously, some companies will just make one great big machine. And traditionally, if you're treated with bioresonance, you would usually go to a clinic and sit there for an hour or 2, maybe several times a week, and be treated in the clinic. But that's not very practical for everyone. So Deta Elis have created these mini portable devices. But for each of these different jobs, detoxing, strengthening and restoring health, and doing the foundational work of energizing and protecting and balancing, we need a different type of waveform. We need different frequencies. And to create those different frequencies, we need a different generator within the device. So if we were to combine them, again, we'll end up with a great big clunky device that we certainly couldn't carry around in our pocket. So instead we have these 3 devices. The restorative device here works with what's called harmonic frequencies. They're very gentle. The detoxing eliminatory device works with what's called square frequencies, which are much more aggressive frequencies. Not aggressive in that they're going to damage or harm your body, but the frequencies are delivered quite quickly and repeatedly in order to weaken microorganisms and break down toxins so they can be excreted. And then we have the energy device that works with floating frequencies. And these are combinations of frequencies that are floating on top of each other. And again, I'll talk more about that in a minute. There's some little illustrations of what the frequencies look like here. So let's have a look at each of these devices and see how they can affect our health. So we're going to start with the energy device, which is gold in colour, but the same size as the others here. And this is what I think of as a foundation device. It's the first device that I came across myself. And for me, it had really staggering effects. I was really amazed at how it changed my health and strengthened and energized me. It does the work of, as I said, energizing our cells, of strengthening the immune system, of calming and de-stressing the nervous system, of balancing the mind and creating more positive and more balanced mindsets. It also shields us from the harm of electromagnetic radiation, of electrosmog, of 5G, of Wi-Fi. It also helps reduce the signs of aging, promotes youthfulness, and safeguards our DNA from damage. So it's a really brilliant device, really, really important. I think anyone can benefit from this device. There's 11 programs in this device, and these are their names. There's one called Energy Pro, which was designed for athletes and sports people to give them a 10-minute energy boost before they ran their race or did whatever they were going to do. And then there's a program called Energy, which just creates a more sustained energy within our cells, helping to increase the electrical voltage within our cells to the optimal level. Then we have a couple of programs to de-stress, to remove fight or flight mode and promote rest and digest mode. So calming the sympathetic nervous system, balancing the autonomic system, relieving everyday stress and mental tension. So harmony and inner peace. The harmony is a bit longer, inner peace is a shorter program. Then we have the protection program, which is fantastic for either shielding and protecting from radiation, but also protecting oneself from other people's funky energies. So if you're working with clients and you've got clients coming in who are a bit depressed or a bit unwell or just not in the greatest of states, and you're someone who's sensitive and easily picks up on other people's energies, you could play the protection program whilst working with clients, and that would keep you in your own kind of grounded, good state without picking anything else up. Then we have a program to promote youthfulness, to accelerate tissue regeneration, and another kind of anti-aging type program called longevity that protects the DNA from damage and helps just keep our health as high as possible. Then we have 3 mindset programs: abundance, which is about helping people release those thought forms and belief systems that stop us from flourishing. So if we're trying to improve our health and our life experience, but we're constantly unconsciously telling ourselves, oh, everything's difficult and oh, we're not going to get very far. So the abundance program quite literally helps harmonize the mind to an abundant mindset. Similarly, the slimness program helps harmonize the mind to be calm and stress-free and positive towards one's sense of self, body image, eating, food, those sorts of issues. And the relationship program harmonizes ourselves, our minds in relation to how we relate to other people, whether it's family members or work colleagues, or whether you're wanting to try and find a relationship, a partner. This will help you get in a kind of optimal state to allow that to happen. So, how is that happening? Now, all of the devices have a lot of research behind them, but interestingly, this device is based on the solfeggio scale, which some people might think is a bit new agey, but there's a lot of research about the solfeggio scale and the frequencies of that scale and the healing effects that each of those frequencies have. And also, interestingly, each of the notes in the solfeggio scale relates to one of our energy centers and has a very particular effect. So this little device is working with these healing solfeggio frequencies. And to give you an example of the effects they have, and this, as I say, is well researched, you can look it up on Google very easily. 714 hertz is proved to relieve pain and stress. 285 hertz helps with tissue healing and organ healing. 417 hertz removes negativity, and so on and so forth. So the energy device, remember I talked about it using floating frequencies. It takes different combinations of these solfeggio frequencies and plays them over the top of each other to create the effects that I was just mentioning here. And interestingly, this program, the longevity program that protects our DNA from damage, is the program that actually combines all of the solfeggio frequencies. They're all playing all at the same time over the top of each other. And that has an incredibly strengthening effect through the core of ourselves, through our cells at a cellular level, to both protect us again from radiation and to protect our DNA from damage. So it's a really incredible set of frequencies. However, as new agey as that might sound, there has been a lot of research done. And the energy program, I can't tell you which combination of solfeggio frequencies are being played because it's a company secret. I only know that the longevity program combines them all. The energy programs do a really important piece of work because if we're stressed, if we're chronically stressed, if we're tired, if we're not sleeping, if we're getting lots of bugs and illnesses, our cells will begin to lose electrical voltage. We want them to be at a kind of maintenance level of minus 70 to 110 millivolts. This is going to keep us in a good state of health. At least we'll have the energy for good health. But as we get chronically tired, stressed, ill, etc., that will drop. And as it drops, our cells are going to get weaker. They're not going to hold energy, and then they're more prone to degenerative conditions. So it's really important that they don't drop to minus 40 to minus 50 millivolts or lower. And the energy program will stop that from happening. It will literally help your cells keep the energy they have and build that energy and strengthen it to give us the best possibility of fighting illness. If our cells are topped up with energy, our immune system will be stronger. So this is a fabulous program, and this had an amazing effect on me. When I first discovered this device years ago, I had COVID and I felt really depleted and kind of leaden and heavy. And playing the energy program on this device just within the space of a few days helped build my energy and brought me back to a better, stronger state than I was in before. The protection program shields us from 5G, which is so important because the amount of 5G that's around now is, well, it's increasing and it's really not good for our health. So to have a device that can shield you not just from 5G, but from general mobile phone radiation, Wi-Fi radiation, electromagnetic radiation is really, really useful. And I've got a little video here. You're going to hear some talking in German, which you can ignore. But it's a little video someone in Germany made and sent, which shows the energy device coming in and blocking or shielding the Wi-Fi that's being emitted from this little tablet here. We've got a radiation reader here, a meter, and you'll see at the beginning the reading for the Wi-Fi being emitted is quite high. It starts at 894 and it will actually go up to 1,000 or so. And then the energy device is going to be brought in and you'll see the figures drop to zero. And that will happen a couple of times. So let's just see. So there's the device and it goes down to zero. And in a minute, it'll be taken away. There we go. The readings from the Wi-Fi go right up high to the 900s. And in a minute, that energy device will come back. And if you watch the numbers in a minute, they're over 1,000 now. They're going to go down there to zero again. So that's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's great to have that radiation protection. It's also great to have a device that can help in medical situations. There was some research done a good few years ago now in Russia with the emergency services, whereby I believe it was for about 6 months when the emergency services were called out to stroke patients and heart attack patients, so quite severe emergency conditions. The emergency services people would put an energy device playing the energy program on the patient whilst they were in transit being taken back to hospital. And the research showed that there was an 80% increase in the survival rates of those patients who had an energy device with them. So 80% more people survived when they used the energy device, which I think is quite staggering. There were also some clinical trials done again in Russia at the Monarchy Hospital in 2019. And this could be a whole talk in itself. It's a huge long trial that they did by examining the structure of blood serums before and after using the energy device and actually using the other two devices as well. And they got readings for what the different devices did in terms of the structure of blood serum. And I'm not going to go into all of that research because it was quite complicated and I don't want to spend the whole of this talk talking about that research. But to skip to the conclusions, they found here the energy device was particularly notable for its efficiency. That there were consistently positive results in any varied form of severe pathology using the mini devices I'm talking about. All the programs that were used reduced the occurrence of chronic toxicity. There was an increase in the potency of the body's defense functions and self-regulatory mechanisms. And there was an improvement in blood circulation at the level of the microcirculatory system. So that's very important. And the advice was to use the devices in complex treatments of patients with any type of pathology. And these devices are used in a lot of Russian hospitals and clinics, as are the scanning machines that I'll move on to a bit later. So there's a lot of kind of backing for this device. But I'd like to move on now to the detoxing device. There's also a lot of research and clinical trials being made on this device. It's called the AP, antiparasitic device. And this, in my mind, is the number one device for detoxing, purifying the body, eliminating nasties from the body, destroying microorganisms, and that sort of work, getting rid of anything that you don't want to be in the body. So this device, it looks the same, it's the same size, but it's silver in colour. It's called the AP. And it works a little differently. This is based on the work of Dr. Royal Raymond Rife, who many people consider to be the founder of bioresonance. He wasn't actually the founder of bioresonance, but he has a name for being that. Because he did some research with a great big microscope that he developed, and he found that every microorganism, so parasites and worms and viruses and bacteria and mold and fungi and these sorts of things, that they all have their own resonant frequency, and those frequencies can be isolated and written down as codes. And he found that if he could recreate through an external source that same frequency as the microorganism, and he could play that frequency into the microorganism at a slightly amplified rate. So a bit like turning the volume up on the radio, he could just slightly turn up the rate at which that frequency was delivered. It had the result of destroying the virus or the parasite or whatever it was without affecting any of the healthy surrounding tissues, which is really amazing. It's a phenomenal piece of, phenomenal finding, really. So Rife isolated frequencies from various microorganisms, and after him, many other doctors and scientists have come along and discovered the frequencies for hundreds and thousands of different microorganisms and substances. But let's look at how this works in simpler terms. You've probably heard about or seen maybe this experiment that can be made with a glass. If you have a glass, the glass, of course, has its own resonant frequency. And if a note is picked and sung that has the same resonant frequency as the glass, for most of us, if we were singing that note, ah, nothing had happened. The glass would stay on the shelf or in our hand. But if someone like an opera singer came along and sang that same note really powerfully, the glass would probably shatter because the opera singer is singing the frequency of the glass, the note with the same frequency as the glass, but at a much amplified rate. The opera singer has a much more powerful, trained voice than I do, or probably any of you do, unless any of you are professional opera singers. So this is what's happening when we play the frequency of a microorganism. It shatters like the glass. And to show you what I mean, and to prove that I'm not making this up, here's a little video, it's a minute and a half, that shows some little organisms floating around on a slide, and the AP device is playing the frequency of those little organisms, they're called paramycium, into them. And you're going to see them one by one dying. And this is in real time. So what we're seeing here is happening at the time it actually happened. So here are the little wiggly creatures, these single cell organelles here. They're on a slide under a microscope, like Rife's big microscope, so we can see them. And they're receiving the frequency from the AP device that's playing their own frequency into them at a slightly amplified rate. And what we're going to see, if you look carefully, is look up here, this one and now this one, they're beginning to explode. And they're literally emptying out their contents. So you can see first they begin to shake and speed up, and then here's another one exploding. Then they explode, here we go with another one, and then they become still because they've died. Here's another one just beginning to empty itself. Here's another one at the top. So we've got far less movement now as they all die off. As I say, this is in real time. There's one or two left there. This one's now exploding, and this one. And then the person filming this is just looking to see if there's any more left that are still alive. And we're going to see one big juicy one. Here we go. It looks a bit like a lemon. And it's just beginning to spin under the effect of these frequencies. And here we go. So this is what happens, whether it's a bacteria or a virus or a mold or whatever the microorganism is, that the frequency will be played in, it will match the frequency of the microorganism, it will cause it to vibrate until it explodes. So what can we rid the body of with this clever little device? Well, lots of things. Here are a few examples. Pesticides that we've ingested unknowingly through the food we eat, environmental toxins, things we've breathed in through the air, drug residues often stored in the liver from medications we've taken, toxins from cleaning products, bleaches and bathroom and kitchen cleaning products, etc. And one of the worst offenders is all the shampoos and moisturizers, skincare, makeup products, all the personal care products that we buy. They're absolutely laden with the most nasty chemicals, preservatives, and toxins. And none of these do any good to our bodies. Of course, there's lots of different forms of toxins. These are just a few. And then we move on to the microorganisms. Well, we've got heavy metals. They're not really a microorganism, but another form of toxin. Heavy metals. And then we've got mold and fungi and yeast, viruses, many different sorts of viruses, parasites. So we've got wiggly, wormy parasites and swimmy protozoa parasites. We've got bacteria that aren't showing here. Lots of different sorts of microorganisms. Now, most of these things You can try to detox with herbs and colonics and tinctures and supplements and all sorts of things. And some of them are not very pleasant to ingest. You might have to change your diet. It can take a long time. And I know for myself, it can take a long time and you might not necessarily succeed. You might not get very far. I spent 10 years trying to get rid of mercury from my body, did everything under the sun, spent tons of money, and was still full of mercury. But with the AP device, it's so simple. You just play the frequency of the metal, of the mold, of the virus, of the parasite. And if you play the frequency every day over a number of weeks and months, so parasites might take a month, heavy metal might take 3 months. Most things take around 3 months. There's one or two things might take a bit longer. But if we play the frequencies each day, we can rid them from the body. And of course, if our bodies are freed from the burden of all these things that shouldn't be in us, then everything can work better. Our cells start working better. All our functioning, our immune system works better. So it's really important to eliminate the nasties. Now, there have been lots of three-stage clinical trials to prove the effectivity of this device. Um, some of the readings are here. These are just three of the readings I pulled out. It showed that using this device, there was a 96% success rate in eradicating parasites. That's pretty good, isn't it? 92% success rate of eliminating Helicobacter pylori, and a 90% eradication rate of eliminating hepatitis, all types of hepatitis from the body. So these are pretty high success rates using this device. And of course, we saw in that little video the organelles exploding and dying, and then just sitting there on the slide. But the next stage that this device would do is to break up the waste products and ensure that they're flushed out through the lymphatic drainage pathways, so you're not sitting with all that kind of waste junk in your body. So here's just a few slides showing, again, the effectivity of the AP. This is a slide with listeria cells. And then after a couple of uses with the AP, you can see the cell number has gone down hugely. Obviously, if you kept playing it each day, they would go completely. This is just after 2 uses. Here we have the same thing with Staphylococcus. So you can see the cells after a couple of activations have reduced hugely. And here we have E. coli before and then after using the device, where the cells are completely destroyed. So if you had an outbreak of E. coli or any of these microorganisms in your body and you played the device every day, you would gradually reduce the quantity of cells until they were all eliminated. And we can see the effectivity here with a few skin issues. Obviously, most of the healings that go on in the body as a result of using the devices you can't see because they're inside. But with skin, we can take photographs. So this was the effect of herpes virus presenting through the skin before and after using the AP. This was a child whose immune system crashed, and the child had lots of nasty symptoms, and this was what happened to one of the feet. You can see before and after the effects here. Another staphylococcus infection before and after. The skin's healing up really nicely. This is a picture. The client was using all of the devices, not just the AP, on a brain tumor that the client was told was inoperable. Here it is before, and you can see it's gone here. Took a year and a half, but nevertheless, it managed to heal itself and disappear. So let's move on from the detoxing device, because of course, when we've had a bug or a virus, or we've had microorganisms or toxins living in our body for a long time, it will decrease the efficiency of our organs. It will cause our bodies to compromise and work in a weakened state. then we're not going to bounce back. We're not going to work as effectively as we could. So the Ritum device, the restorative device, again, it looks the same, but it's white in colour, has been created to help people bounce back, if you like, to restore and strengthen their health, to recalibrate the healthy frequencies and rhythms within their cells and organs. This was really useful in the time of coronavirus because, of course, a lot of people found that or certain organs at least, were affected after they'd had the coronavirus. And of course, there's a whole family of coronaviruses, which include lots of different colds and flus and things. And many people find that after having an infection of that sort, they're just left feeling a bit tired and fatigued, or that something isn't quite in balance. So again, using a device like this to help recalibrate and restore health is really, really important. This device contains hundreds and hundreds of programs to bring back the healthy functioning of our cells and organs. And it's called the Ritum device. So just a reminder of how this works. We've got our healthy, strong frequencies. Our organs can become weakened when we're tired or stressed, or we've got all those microorganisms affecting us and compromising us. And then the frequencies of our organs become weakened. You can use the Ritum device to externally play the frequencies of our healthy organs to remind our depleted organs what the healthy state looks and feels like. And when we play those healthy frequencies, the depleted organ goes, oh, I vaguely remember this. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, I do remember this. Oh, I can join in with this. Oh, yes, I can do this. And at some point, it can hold its own frequency without the need for the device. And that's what we see here, the return to health. So here's an example. The heart, the frequency of the heart is 7.83 hertz. If this heart were depleted or weakened or just out of whack or not working properly, we could use the DeVita Ritum to play 7.83 hertz. And the heart would gradually, as it's doing here, begin to join in with that frequency, with its own frequency, being reminded of its own calibration until it could hold that on its own and maintain its strength. It's a really simple but very clever little device. Now, some people say, how do I know which programs to use on any of these devices? Where do I start? Do I start with energizing my cells? Do I start with detoxing? Do I start with strengthening? And given that there's 2,500 programs in the AP device and the Ritum device, it's like, which do I choose? So the company Deta Elis that has created these devices has created an initial 4-month protocol to bring about general strengthening, general rebalancing, harmonizing, general detoxing to generally get people in a better state if they're not used to using these devices. And when they've worked with this general detox and general rebalancing, then they're in a much better state if they've got something specific they want to work on, to go on and work on that. Of course, you can dive in and work on a specific issue straight away, but if you've got a lot of interfering toxins and microorganisms, it's not going to be as effective if you haven't first reduced some of that toxic load. So there's this protocol here that tells you which programs to play on which device, the energy device, the restorative device, or the detox device, over the course of 4 months. So this is one option if you're self-treating with these devices. Another option is to work with a themed protocol. There's 16 here, but there's actually more like, I think it's 24 that the company have developed to help rebalance and enhance and optimize health in different areas. So if you had a kind of issue with your heart and circulation, you could work with this 4-month protocol. If you had an issue with joints, you could work with this movement without pain protocol. If you had a digestive issue, you could work with this one, and so on and so forth. And on my website, I've got all of these protocols that you can look at and download and work with to self-treat. And then, of course, you could work with individual programs, and I'm happy to give guidance about which you could use if need be. But another way of working with these devices is if you want to, rather than self-treating, if you've got a very specific issue and you really want to get to the bottom of it precisely, you want to know exactly what's happening in your body, what's going on, and have programs tailor-made for you. Another option is to come and have a bioresonance scan. Now, these are medically diagnostic. They're 98% accurate, reliable, according to clinical trials. And they happen via this device here, which is called the Deta Professional, which is a bioresonance scanning machine. And I arrange for people who wish to have a scan for this man, Dr. Yannis, who's a bioresonance specialist from Greece. He's also a doctor, mainstream doctor, and a homeopath and a naturopath. And I arrange for him to come over every 3 months to give appointments, to give people scans, to understand what's going on with their health. And then if they want to have tailor-made treatment programs made, he will make them for you. So this is an option to come down to Sussex and have a scan. And the scan happens via a probe on your finger. So it's not a scan as in getting undressed and going into a big machine in a hospital. You just sit there and this probe will deliver the frequencies of the things we're testing for into your finger, which will either resonate or not resonate with whatever you have in your body. So if we're testing to see, have you got a particular mold, that frequency will be delivered, the mold frequency, through the probe into your finger, into your body. And if you have mold, there will be a reaction because you'll have the frequency of mold in your body and it will react with the frequency of mold that's coming in through the probe. And it will give a particular reading on this part of the machine here where there's a dial. Whereas if you don't have mold, you won't get that reaction. And so the reading will be different on the dial. So in this picture, 80 means you don't have it. So there's this series of bouncing frequencies into your finger, noticing the reactions in your body via this dial. And ingeniously, we can get loads and loads and loads of different readings about all sorts of things. So to give you some examples, we can get readings about your liver function, the toxicity levels in your liver, the dystrophies and the fat levels in your liver. We can get readings about the extracellular matrix and how congested it is. Now, this means the space between your cells that needs to be nice and free and decongested so that nutrients and waste products and things can pass through your cells to your blood and from your blood to your cells. We get readings about stress levels and how your nervous system is adapting to different stresses. We have readings about your cellular respiration, your cellular energy reserves, any cellular dystrophies, stress levels within your cells. We have readings for immune function, stress in the immune system or exhaustion in the immune system. And then we have these fascinating readings about environmental contaminations from geopathic stress, from nuclear radiation, from electromagnetic pollution, heavy metal contamination, environmental toxins, and then toxins from drugs, toxins from household products, and so on. We can gain readings about mineral and vitamin and micronutrient deficiencies, about food sensitivities, food intolerances, about allergies, about hormone deficiencies. We can also have readings about autoimmune processes. So looking at pathological changes, chronic inflammation, acute inflammatory processes. We can look at more pathological changes, looking at pre-oncological processes. We can look for tumours. We can look for tumours of different sizes that are metastasizing or that are staying in one place. Cysts, fibroids, polyps, all of these sorts of things we can detect through having a bioresonance scan. And then we can look at microorganisms and see if we have them, and if so, whether they're acute or chronic, how much of them, how big the load is, and where they're situated in the body, whether they're buried deeply or whether they're more superficial. So we can look at viral loads, bacterial loads, fungal, mold, yeast, different parasitic loads, and other bits and pieces. So having a scan gives you an immense amount of information. And of course, depending on what you say to Dr. Yanis when you come, he can investigate all sorts of other things as well as need be. So having a scan gives you very precise information and can enable you to have guidance and support whilst you're being treated with tailor-made programs. Other people globally will use these devices themselves without a scan for self-treatment. And that's also wonderfully effective because, of course, a lot of people around the world can't have scans. If you're interested in scans, there is also the possibility to come and train to use the scanner, to train to be a bioresonance practitioner. And if anyone's interested, please contact me and I'll tell you more about this. But we have the next training coming up at the beginning of October. And there's different parts to the training, but it's a wonderful skill to have to be able to use this scanner and use the different treatment devices to work with clients. Okay, so there's just a couple more things I briefly want to mention before we bring this to a close, because I've talked about the mini bioresonance treatment devices. But there is another treatment, well, there's several other treatment devices that work in different ways. And there's a bigger one that will treat animals, for example, that a lot of vets use. But there's this little, it's not quite as little as the other ones, device called the BRT. Better to see it in this picture here, which works with bioresonance in a slightly different way. The devices I've been talking about work with what's called exogenous bioresonance. That is, they create a bioresonance frequency and play it into the body. But this device is called an endogenous bioresonance therapy device because it takes the frequencies that are already in your body. It doesn't play any external frequencies in. It just looks at the frequencies that are in your body and it divides them into harmonious frequencies that belong to you and disharmonious frequencies that belong to microorganisms. It takes the disharmonious ones and turns them upside down, which cancels them out. It deactivates them or neutralizes them. And it works with one program, it takes 20 minutes. And the 20-minute program it plays has the effect of reducing inflammation, boosting the immune system, and de-stressing the body. So it's very useful for people who've got kind of chronic inflammatory conditions. It's very useful for people who have had vaccine damage. It's very useful for people with weak immune systems. It will help boost the immune system and generally harmonize the functioning of your body. So you don't need to tell it to play a program for mold or a program for parasites or a program for strengthening this or that. There's just this one program that moves through your body, taking out the disharmonious frequencies and neutralizing them. So as well as boosting the immune system and reducing inflammation and stress, it also is a brilliant preventative device. If you play this 20-minute program a couple of times a week, anything that you might have picked up from someone or somewhere will get neutralized. So a bug that might have been to develop into a cold or flu will get cancelled out and you won't be at the mercy of it. So again, there's talks that I've given, and I'm sure more talks I'll give solely about this device. It's a really fantastic tool to have. working on this principle of reverse activation or inversion. And this is the original form of bioresonance therapy. This is the oldest form of bioresonance therapy, where you're just inverting the frequencies in your body that you don't want to have there. And the last thing I just want to mention isn't a bioresonance product, but it's a product that Deta Elis, who make all of these devices, have created because it's a fantastic support product. Obviously, when you start using these devices, you're detoxing, you're re-strengthening, reconfigurating your inner functioning. It's nice to support your body, to support the detox, to support the energizing of your cells. And this bottle is a hydrogen bottle. It also produces ozone, but the main thing people use it for usually is for producing hydrogenated water that you can drink. And hydrogenated water has the effect of helping detox the gut. It has the effect of slowing down cellular degeneration and speeding up cellular regeneration. It takes away the free radicals. It reduces the oxidative stress that is responsible for the cellular degeneration. And it energizes the mitochondria of our cells. The hydrogen molecules are so tiny, they go straight into the mitochondria and they go straight through the blood-brain barrier to feed the neurological tissue of our brains. So it's just a very easy support product. I don't know if you can see if I press this button. Let's see with the lighting, you can sort of vaguely see some movement there. Let's see if I put something behind this. That doesn't help, does it? We're not going to, you can maybe vaguely see there's a column of bubbles traveling up the middle there. Not so easy on Zoom. This basically hydrogenates water and also enables you to nebulize hydrogen to clean your respiratory mucous membranes. And it also ozonates water to clean things with, or to use as a mouthwash or a gargle. So again, there's other talks about this amazing little water device. And you can also use the devices if you've got them to program the water. So you could program your water with inner peace or with energy or with protection or with any one of the programs in these devices by holding it at the side and playing the program into the water, and the water will hold the memory of those frequencies. So you've listened brilliantly. I thank you for your attention. This is just scraping the iceberg, or whatever the expression is. There's lots more that we could say about bioresonance and about these products and about the many other products, bioresonance products that Deta Elis create. But I hope this gives you a little bit of an overview, a general starting overview understanding of bioresonance.